Hi, this is Alex Romanovich of Global Edge Markets, and welcome to our virtual roundtable titled AI in Regulated Segments. Today, we're sponsoring this event together with NetWeb Software. Ankit Shah is here with us. He's the head of growth, and we have a very distinguished group of participants. And I'm going to make some very quick introductions. And let's start with Mark. 140, co-founder of Delta AI, former Ernst & Young principal, also spent 12 plus years in the United States Armed Forces. Mark will weigh in on the financial segment and government segments and artificial intelligence in those segments. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Alex. Excited to be here.
It gives me great pleasure to also welcome Nandini Sankara, the Chief Marketing Officer at Suburban Propane. She also spent some time at Aetna, an executive there, Sealed Air, and Pitney Bowes. Nandini will weigh in on energy and insurance segments. Welcome, Nandini.
Thank you, Alex, and look forward to joining everybody today.
Another great friend of mine, Stephanie Anderson, founder of Shared CMO, board member in a wonderful company dedicated to mental health, Solutionize, former senior vice president and chief marketing officer at Time Warner Cable, and executive with a number of companies like Charter, Cablevision, Avaya, will represent telecom and cable sector, as well as health and wellness sectors. Hi, Stephanie.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Isaac Chapa, welcome. Isaac is a founder and the chief technology officer at Simple Healthcare. He also spent some time as an executive at Experian, CSID, and a number of other organizations in healthcare and financial services sector. Will represent healthcare, FinServ, and weigh in on AI in those segments. Welcome, Isaac.
Thanks, Alex. Great to be here.
And last but not least, Ankit Shah, head of growth and business development for NetWeb Software, one of the fastest growing IT services and integration companies in agentic AI, with a number of solutions globally. Welcome, Ankit.
Thank you, Alex, and pleasure to be here.
I'm very excited, and I suggest that we begin in this really wonderful and very interesting conversation, at times edgy. So let's make it edgy. Mark, let's start with you. AI is an enabler, not a replacement. Let's talk about that. And of course, other members, please welcome to weigh in on this. How do you see AI augmenting government roles without workforce loss? I mean, we've seen recently a number of lost jobs in the government sector. But when we talk about compliance and documentation, when we talk about security and other very important topics, how do you see AI augmenting government roles?
Yeah, thanks, Alex. So governments are making major investments in AI, and that's to reduce administrative burdens and free up their workforce for some of those higher impact tasks. There was a Deloitte study, and Deloitte estimates that AI could save federal employees up to 1 billion hours annually just by automating the repetitive manual tasks that take up the vast majority of these employees' times. For example, they're already using tools like Microsoft Copilot that have already saved tens of thousands of hours. And these tools are freeing the staff up to focus on more important things like policy and people, right? The high impact portions of their job. And this has been the focus of the AI tools that I've seen and the data that I've read. AI is being used to augment human performance, but not actually replace the human. And that's what we're building at Delta AI as well. Is it, a tool for augmenting the workforce and automating manual tasks. Our goal is to make the worker more effective. So we believe that we'll always need humans in the loop for judgment, ethics, and trust.
Thank you, Mark. I'll switch around, and one of the probably most controversial and difficult topics to talk about right now is what's going on in the ecology and the environment, energy. I do not have to. I mean, it's all over the news. I don't have to tell you about what's going on in Texas right now. What has been happening in major metropolitan areas, New York City, scorching heat, 100+ degree heat, all kinds of outages, human life loss, and so forth. Nandini, how can artificial intelligence scenario planning shift energy firms from reactive tactics to strategic resilience to planning to scaling perhaps, and making sure that at least we cannot prevent the disasters, but at least we're ready for them?
I think it's a great question. It's so timely. I mean, energy is probably one of the most, if not the most polarizing topic, right? If you go in around robin, we all have our opinions and what energy means to us. We all need it. We all use it. And it's been so unfortunate with all the natural disasters. I mean, what's happening in Texas right now? I believe it's close to a $10 billion in damage. And what just happened in the Carolinas? And you look at all the power outages in the state of California. And, I've been in the energy industry now close to a decade, and I'm still learning every single day. Then you throw in AI in the mix. Artificial intelligence needs data centers. We're all aware of that. And I was at the BNEF summit, that's the Bloomberg Energy Summit, a couple months ago. I read a really interesting stat. The stat basically said it takes up to 6 years for a utility to power an AI center. So just think about that, right? Any given town, and they pick them in remote locations, but in every state, I'm just talking about the United States, even globally. Parts of Asia, parts of Africa, they're setting up these AI centers, if you will. And Alex, you brought up ramp up time. To me, I don't think we're ready today. Seeking Alpha just published something, I think, this morning. And I thought that was a very interesting statistic. If we don't change our reliance on energy and at the rate that, AI is growing, data centers around the world, by 2030, which at this point, we're less than 4.5 years away, right? We're up for a lot of problems. There'll be major energy grid failures. I mean, with the 100-degree weather we're seeing right now, and also really brutal winters in parts of the world, right? It's extreme weather. And then you're already having a power grid that's under a lot of pressure. If you're pressurizing it even more. And so what does that mean for us as a country, as a world civilization economy? What can we do proactively? Looking at alternative sources of energy, right? I'm currently sitting in the propane industry. And most places today, the way they power AI data centers without a power grid is natural gas powered generators. But remember, there's remote parts of the country do not have natural gas pipelines. So one of the conversations we're heavily exploring is how LPG, as it's known globally, or in the United States, propane and butane, how can that be used, at least in the temporary phase? The temporary phase is not 1 or 2 months. We're talking up to 6 years. And even that may not help lower the overall reliance on the power grid because you're putting all this, no pun intended, into powering this, right? But what happens to towns, cities around it? So in terms of being proactive, I think it needs legislations. As we're starting to build data centers, as we're actively moving, how do we manage that pace? How do we keep that pace? At a federal level, state level, hyper-local level, we need legislation that protects, the communities to make sure, listen, we can't prevent natural disasters. They're going to happen, right? We're already in hurricane season. It started in June, ends in November. I lived through Hurricane Sandy. I see a couple fellow New Yorkers here with me. We lived through Sandy. Hurricanes happen, nor'easters happen, storms happen, right? No matter how you look at it. It's preparing for this. We need help from a government level. We need legislation that says, okay, you know what? As AI is ramping up, what else needs to be done? We need investments. We need investments in infrastructure with energy, right? We need to understand what are the different platforms we need to set up? What does that infrastructure look like? And it can't be a reactive thing, Alex, to your point, because we're not going to be ready. We're going to fall way behind the 8 ball, not just here in the United States, around the world. So the main areas I look at is we need proactive legislation. We need proactive investments. And we really need a scaled plan. Like, what's the short-term immediate impact, midterm, long-term? And we continue planning for this because technology is just going to continue growing and evolving faster than I'm speaking right now, right? So that would be my initial thoughts of this.
Yeah. Thank you, Nandini. Very disturbing and challenging at the same time. It was interesting because of the recent power outage in New York City. I was actually hoping for an internet operator. In my case, it was AT&T, but I was hoping for other mobile operators, not only to give us some of the early warning system messages, but also maybe with all the information that's being collected on us, maybe give me some kind of a personal messages. Alex, don't worry, it's going to come soon, or we're in touch with National Grid and Con Edison, and it's going to be okay or whatever. Now, Stephanie, you're a veteran of the telecom and cable industry. Do you think we'll ever see AI helping these giants, improve our personalization, improve our customer service, if you will?
Yes, thanks, Alex. Absolutely. There's no question that we are well on the way, and probably for the last, I'm going to say 6 to 8 years, a lot of fundamental work has been going on that may or may not be considered AI as we know it today, but around machine learning and understanding behavior and trying to improve the customer experience and deliver, the right information at the right time to the right person. And that's been the focus for many, many years. Now, again, a lot of that was pre some of the more popularized AI, which, generative AI knowledge. And I think that's only going to help as well. But really it's about implementation, it's about training, it's about making sure the customer experience is the best that it can be. And that's been the focus.
Yeah, it seems like AI is going to touch every part of our life, not only when it comes to disasters, but also when it comes to everyday type of activities. Health, let's take a look at that. Something that's near and dear to all of us. Creation and co-creation of new applications is going to be extremely important. Isaac, as somebody who is actually developing something for the healthcare end users and also partners, is there a way that we'll ever see AI make its way into the clinicians and doctors' offices, but also on patients' mobile devices? And how is this going to look? Please tell us.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, getting it into clinicians, they just need to contact us. So that's actually doable today. One of the things I'll take a step back, with healthcare, there has been unfortunately a lack of focus on customer experience and clinician experience, right? I think one of the recurring themes I heard with some of the answers this morning were, there's really this short-sightedness of how can I improve what's going on today? And AI is the shiny object. But a lot of times people don't consider the other factors, right? So healthcare has not considered patients and clinicians. And I won't point any names, but a lot of the legacy systems are all about these behemoths that have been around for 30 years that just do not consider that experience, right? So it's very critical, with AI as a tool, that we involve the patients, that we involve the clinicians in the design of those solutions for various reasons. Now, number one is really the biggest thing is they're the users of the system. It's not the big money makers, the CFOs, et cetera. They love to generate the revenue from it. But if the experience is ingrained with both patients and clinicians, there's more of an adaptation to be able to use these products, and they hopefully have better results, right? So, we've already had some very successful results in the past year and a half, automating a lot of tasks through AI, even through agentic AI as well, to help reduce the burdens that clinicians have by taking and writing their notes for them at a very high success rate, right? So, clinicians have to write notes for their encounters, et cetera. So if there's a way to get them to focus more on the care side of it, as opposed to the document side of it, that will help essentially everybody that's involved with the healthcare life cycle.
Thanks, Isaac. Ankit, on to you quickly. As you're listening, your company and yourself, you guys have built probably every solution or every mini solution in agentic AI and other solutions in every industry that's being mentioned here. But going back to what Nandini was saying, we need data centers, we need scalability, we need security, we need to be ready, we need to be scalable. How do you foresee AI being scalable? How do you see companies being prepared and planning ahead, if you will, to be scalable?
As you're right, and as we talk about scale, the risk increases, right? Model exposure, data leakage, attacks. So and then especially in the case of implementing AI or AI-based solutions in regulated industries specifically, I think layered security is something that is very, very important. And when I say layered security, it starts from the AI SDLC itself, right? I'm not calling SDLC, but from an engineering perspective, it is now AI SDLC. So how secure, how robust you are having your AI SDLC, how robust your data security, your model security, right? Model security is something that was not part of the SDLC earlier, right? But looking for biases, testing for any wrong data being there in the model. So that is very important. So and then the CI/CD process, how you are actually deploying it, how you plan to monitor your AI once it is out in the production. Is there any shift happening? Are there any anomalies, right? How do you react to those anomalies? So I think there are these 6 or 7 aspects that you really need to thoroughly map out, almost like a checklist. And when you do that, you can minimize a lot of the risk that comes in AI even in highly regulated, high-stake environment.
Yes, indeed. And Anthony, going back to you, you spent some time with Aetna in the insurance sector. And, I had an interesting experience recently with the insurance company as well, dental insurance in that particular case. But what's interesting is that I guess I was part of some kind of a model. I was modeled because they assessed the risks. They integrated with my service provider or healthcare provider, and then they either accepted or rejected, accepted a part of it, rejected part of it, or whatever. But it seems like as consumers, as patients, we're all going to be scrutinized by every aspect of life, whether it's getting mobile service or getting healthcare service or getting government service or being protected by the armed forces within the city limits or outside. Now, in this particular case, how do, as an example, insurance companies provide service, but they also provide fairness? How do we make sure that we're being treated fairly?
It's very interesting. We started off talking about energy and disaster, right? That's directly connected to insurance, right? We all, being a renter or a homeowner and, patient, we all need insurance, right? And I'm just talking about the United States. If someone's outside the US, it may be different policies, if you will, or procedures. But in the US, I'm a homeowner, and you know what? I have homeowners insurance, flood zone insurance, because I live very close to the Hudson River. And we have health insurance, dental insurance, vision, et cetera, right? And just, we spoke about disasters a little earlier. So if you think about the insurance claims, and in many states and many locations, you can't even file insurance claims for most of the stuff that you were filing them on for disasters, right? Especially if you're living way too close to the ocean. I mean, Florida is a classic example of that, right? And you spoke about health insurance, Alex. I mean, I was just doing some research earlier, and I think reinsurance costs, like mid-year, is going up to 12%. That's pretty significant if you think about it, right? And just with AI in the insurance industry, I think of it as a consumer, as an end user, AI has made our life, to me, a little simpler. I mean, who here doesn't use Chat GPT or some form of, AI, if you will, to get your information? I know I've used it about 10 times today already. It's easier to get insurance, and I think this is going to keep, and I haven't been in the insurance industry for a little bit. I was there when, the pre-Medicare stuff was just really heating up. And I know insurance, like energy, is always a hot potato item, right? There's Medicaid, there's Medicare, pre-Medicare, all different types of insurance, if you will. And trust me, you need a PhD just to get through them. I spent 2.5 years there, and I still am trying to kind of figure my way out to my basic health insurance. But I think AI can simplify a lot of it. I mean, Alex, you brought up the model, right? So there's a great opportunity to say, okay, this is the pilot program. These are your benefits. Also, as end users, and it could be a B2B or a DTC, a consumer like all of us, or business owners. I know we've got some business owners on this call as well. What insurance does, what AI does, it could help simplify the process. And I think insurance industries are really embracing that. I mean, I know, Stephanie, you're in the education field, right? In education, you're just going ahead, you're talking about insurance across the board. AI helps simplify it, helps, make it more accessible, make us understand better. And that's something that's lacking today, right? How many hours have each one of us spent on the phone, right? 1-800, figure out your insurance company, right? Went online. And I think from an insurance company standpoint, they've got to up their game as well. Because I know we spoke about legislation and regulation, a little bit about energy. Insurance is another industry that's heavily regulated, right? Especially here in the United States. How can AI help some of that? And state by state, that could change. Make that information. I think, Alex, you hit on something earlier, was communication. And I think what AI is going to do, the number one thing that comes to mind right away for me is simplification through communication. It makes it easier access to information, which today is a problem. It could be even pre-life event, pre-disaster, post-disasters. None of us are perfectly prepared for the next hurricane, next fill in the blanks, right? Fire, if you will. But what if you have all this other stress, whatever just happened in California a few months ago? People lost their homes, their livelihood. That insurance claim probably was the toughest thing, but it's a must do to get some semblance of their life back. To me, AI can help with that from an insurance company standpoint and from an end user standpoint.
I think one of the dangers, Alex, that and Kate had mentioned earlier around bias is a built-in bias in AI. Humans have bias, but there's built-in bias in AI too. And we have to be careful when the data is being reviewed that we're not overcorrecting one way or another in these insurance models, or quite frankly, any model. But health insurance or natural disaster type insurance, I mean, I think that's going to be a very, touchy area.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then just to add on that, I don't know that it's biased, but I think a lot of times certain businesses may not have an ethical stance on how they use AI. We've seen issues in the past year that are raised on the healthcare insurance side. And if you look at the data on rejections, a lot of companies were finding AI vendors with the premise of help me deny more, right? They wanted to increase denials. That shouldn't be the focus of AI. I love hearing the simplification and the abilities it can do, but if a company's sole focus is help me reject so I can make more money, that's not an ethical use of AI that needs to be addressed. And, if it's regulation, great. I don't have too much faith that government regulation can help with some of those things, but, maybe it's things like, hey, there's a certain standard of pass rates. And if you're rejecting at a very high failure rate, maybe you should be looked at in your use of AI, right? So I think that's one of the big things to look at is the ethical use of AI as well with these solutions. It simplifies, but it should have the intent of making it easier for everybody, not rejecting and increasing profits.
I think, Isaac, that's a really important point because I think ethics and AI should go hand in hand, regardless of industry. I mean, you brought up a great example with really humanizing it. And I
Hmm.
think that EQ level of AI, because at the end of the day, it's machine learning, right? Are we taking the EQ away? That's applicable to, we're representing a lot of different industries here. There's that emotional quotient that we should not, and ethics is directly correlated to that. We should not take that away. So I think you're spot on.
And that's where I guess this whole concept of explainable AI is really coming to play, where you have to put explainability into the model, so you know how it is kind of making decisions or deriving the logic it is. So that's a big focus even in compliance when you're implementing AI-driven solutions of adding explainability to the model.
Mhm.
It's funny because when you think about it, AI is this latest innovation that's been brewing out there for quite some time. But it seems like, at least I feel that way. It seems like we're all now being a part of their focus, right? AI is there to either enhance what we're doing or replace us or make our life better or provide more services or take away some of the services and so forth and so on. So how do we make sure, as leaders in your respective segments, how do we make sure that we also build some human empathy and focus on human in this entire race for new innovation, for new tech, for a new way of doing things, and sometimes, doing some very inhuman activity, if you will, whether it's replacing you or taking services away from you or automating some of the services around you or something like that. How do we build, whether, if you're government, how do we build that human, not just ethics, but empathy, excuse me, into it? Or if you're in a customer service environment, in telco, in telecom, in healthcare, and financial services, how do we make sure that we still remain human?
I think it's definitely a customer first, kind of view. You have to keep the customer at the core of everything that you're doing and that experience. And, you can still save money, you can still make money and keep the customer at the center of your business, whether it's, telecom or cable or, insurance, whatever. I think that we get caught up a lot of times with the fascination around the data or the information and we head in a different direction. But if you keep it to the point of having a human factor involved, the human is the customer. And at this point, I think if we kind of keep that at the center of everything. And the other thing is too, as you're working on AI throughout your business, to also balance that with technical people being involved. And of course, you need your data scientists and all that, but you also need business leaders involved as closely, right in lockstep to define the strategy and set the pace and the tone and what the outcome's going to be so that everyone is equally invested and, working toward the same strategic goal. And that should be a better customer experience. So they'll keep coming back.
Yeah, I think building trust is the big key, right? And I think trust comes with time and data, right? So, to kind of get out of the segment of what we're in, being in Austin, we're kind of a epicenter for the self-driving car wars going on, right? I've been able to see one company over the last, let's say, 18 months slowly grow their footprint of automation around the areas. They made stupid mistakes early on, but it looks like they've learned from them. And now you don't know that there's, 50 to 150 cars in Austin that are driving themselves. And you see them all the time, and now they've become part of the culture. You have another company who is, how fast can we launch? Let's get it out ASAP, already having accidents within the first couple days. To me, that's not building trust for me, right? I don't want to be near a car that I don't trust, right? I might trust another one. So with me, and I think people in general, you want to get whatever AI you're using to build trust with you, right? So when we work with clinicians and patients, it's not a matter of here's a solution, go use it tomorrow for all, 1,000 clinicians in your practice. We need to build the trust. We have to show them its capability. We refine it. We work with them to say this is what it can do. We get that trust from them showing its capability and then roll it out more, right? So it's not a how fast can we get to market? It's let's build that trust so people can use our solutions across all of our industries.
Yeah, and I think one of the ways to build that trust when it comes to using AI is the human on the loop model, which is where, the AI is just not out there doing its thing and making its own decisions, but there is a human that's providing input and refinement in real time. And then for organizations to broadcast that, like, hey, the AI is not just out here making its own decisions autonomously. There are people involved in real time in monitoring the decisions that are made to ensure that they're in line with whatever our procedures are, whatever our best practices are, whatever we want them to be in line with. So the model's not just doing its own thing.
On a lighter note, friends, I was talking to a few people, and you know how when we go to websites right now, the CAPTCHA makes us make sure that it's not a bot. And with so many bots, it's not very far when it's going to ask, are you human? If you're human, you're not allowed. So I think I agree to Mark. I think the human in the loop, where we actually intervene, where we put the kill switches is important, whenever we are doing AI implementation. And we hear of the humans connecting to the LLMs, right? They're connecting social bonding. It's not obviously very healthy, but that's something that is it's part and parcel of all technologies. You have the good uses and you have the negative uses. So it's a balance. I think everyone has to kind of follow.
It's the ethics behind it too. I think, Isaac, you brought up ethics a little earlier. What does that algorithm look like, right? As AI starts dominating things little by little. It's been around a while if you think about it. I think, Alex, you kicked us off with that. But it's in the news now. We're here today. We're talking about this, representing a plethora of industries, is because it's a real thing. It's a blessing, but it's also a curse. So that's where the human versus machine, how are we drawing that line? And to your point, Ankit, at what point are we, who's the kill switch, the human or the machine? How does that look? So that'll be a very interesting conversation as, this continues building and evolving.
Well, I would like to thank everybody for this amazing discussion. As leaders in your industry segments and people with a lot of experience, I think the humanity is depending on you and on the decisions that you're going to impact. With that, let's open the floor for some of the comments and some of the questions from the audience. But I would love to thank all of you for participation. And I think the future, with you at the helm in your segments, the future looks very bright. I am not as concerned as I was before this conversation. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.